Here we go. Um, it's rad, and there's junk, and this is a podcast. This is the RadJunk podcast. I'm your host Joe Alonso, owner of RadJunk Rad Bar and Really Rad Weekend, a retro video game store, an arcade bar, and a retro-ish themed video game convention in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Um, how's everyone doing today? I know that I can't actively talk to you because you're probably listening to this after the fact. Unless you tune in on Twitch, twitch.tv/RadJunk, where you can watch us live every Thursday. And here we are. I'm here to give you a weekly recap of what's going on in my life. Really, what I mean by that is at the businesses or rad things that are happening in the retro video game world, or the not so rad things, which we'll talk a little bit about that later in our sort of news section. So everything's kind of jumbled up this week. We got back from Chicago. Sam and I took a short trip, primarily for vacation. Normally we were trying to start this annual thing where we were going to go to Vegas, but flights got out of control. So we ended up in Chicago, which coincided with the Pinball Festival or Expo, which is wild. I'll talk a little more in depth about that later. And now we're back in it, full swing. Really Rad Weekend's like 3 weeks away. That's our charity convention here in the area, specifically on Okaloosa Island. And we fly a bunch of people in, whatever. You guys know what Really Rad Weekend is. But we're trying to get prepped for that as far as like our businesses go, and just getting the convention together and selling some tickets and promotion and blah, 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 guests and flights and all that. So it's been wild. It's even wilder because we have a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old. And so life's crazy. Wake up every morning and try to drink some coffee and eat some food and then get going. Some days are harder than others. Today we got up at a decent time, took care of some things, answered some emails, sent some emails, went to the bar with my son. Basically, I was assessing the situation on all of our pinball machines so I could order parts and get that knocked out. That way they're here in time for Really Rad Weekend, because I really want to refresh all the machines, get all the consumables in a good spot. And then Sam and Kenna started on the outer wall where they're doing a mural. It's going to be awesome. It's just going to take some time, so we're trying to get that knocked out. A lot of maintenance to do, things like that. Molly and Allie were at the shop today. Not the busiest day, but a pretty decent day. Got a lot of work done. We've been working on restructuring some things internally as far as our point of sale stuff goes, and trying to get it more streamlined and in a place where reporting is a little more accurate and a little bit easier for someone to just walk in and use the machine so they can ring something up. Because I'll be honest, like, I know that Sam and Molly primarily work the store, so it's they know the point of sale stuff really intuitively and well, and where everything is. However, sometimes, even though a lot of it hasn't changed in years, I'll go in and things are a little bit hard to find because it wasn't all categorically correct, and the reporting could be far more granular. So Molly's done a really good job of like rearranging that and recategorizing things to make that good. So, and then Allie's been cleaning consoles and organizing the back room, and she's picked up on that really quickly and does a really great job. So they've got the shop on lock, and it's doing well. We did beer tasting today. We got some new stuff into the bar. Got a dark cider of sorts, where it's made with like darker fruits like black cherry and blackberries. Pretty good, pretty solid. We also have a candy corn beer that just hit today. It's not bad. I love candy corn, but it's not really my jam. And then I believe we have a cherry strudel beer that we got from Untitled Arts. That's really good. We're trying to get some fun beers in because this weekend we have our Halloween event Got cash costume contests and all that. Halloween's always really big for us. It's a good time. Everybody dresses up. The girls are making their costumes, putting the finishing touches on those. And yeah, I mean, like I said, things are pedal to the metal. We're going after everything. In big, really rad weekend news, I was standing in my kitchen night before last thinking, man, we need to sell some tickets. Like, we're doing okay, but like, really want to make this thing big because we want to donate a good amount to the charity that we support. And it's kind of like, all right, what can we do marketing wise and this and that and whatever. We came up with some good ideas. And all of a sudden, my phone rings, and it's someone that I had heard of and then spoken to briefly at some point. And Bam Margera is going to be at Really Rad Weekend. I know that sounds wild and crazy. But yeah, he's going to come out, hang out, probably going to skate some, play some Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I grew up skateboarding. That's how I broke my foot recently, realizing I was too old to skateboard. And he was one of the big influences style-wise before all the MTV stuff was going on, and before he had TV shows, and when land speed was a thing. And so I never thought that I'd get the phone call that's like, hey, Bam wants to come to your thing. Can you guys have Bam out? So Bam Margera will be there. Unfortunately, on the other side of the coin, Tyler from My Retro Life has some life obligations come out. So he will not be making it to Really Rad Weekend this year. We wish him the best, and I wish he was going to be here. I love his content. If you haven't checked out My Retro Life, please go check that channel out. He does a great job and uses a lot of footage from that his father took when he was a kid, and his dad kind of documented everything, and it like hits close to home, and it's really good. So unfortunately, My Retro Life will not be making it to Really Rad Weekend, but maybe we can get him out next year. And once again, best wishes to him. But yeah, we got Bam Margera. Freaking wild. I'm still like kind of blown away by that. So real quick, I want to touch on Really Rad Weekend on something I was thinking of. We've talked about it before, and I want to get it out of the way while it's fresh on my brain. Would anybody be interested in checking out like a 6-player Steel Battalion LAN match at Really Rad Weekend? So I've got a set up. I know my friend Nate's got one or two. My friend Mark's got one or two. I think we've got, and I believe my friend Ryan has one. But I think we have access to about 6 Steel Battalions, and we could probably make something happen that would be really cool. I know that there's a like, underground's not the word, but there is a community, an active community, where they have figured out ways to kind of emulate the servers and do all this stuff. And it might be something really cool. So for those that don't know, Steel Battalion is like this big setup that's a dual joystick game, and it's got a pedal set like a racing game. It's got a clutch pedal, a brake, and a gas. And you control a giant mech. So it's like Mech Warrior on steroids, and the control setup takes up like an entire desk. And it's got switches you can flip and like buttons and all kinds of stuff. And it's all mapped to the same thing that's in your mech. And it's an Xbox game. There were 2 of them. I think there was actually a third one that was had something to do with the Kinect. But it's crazy. It's the craziest thing you'll ever see when they're all set up together. So that might be something kind of fun we could do. So maybe we'll check that out. But yeah, I don't know. Would you guys like to see a Steel Battalion LAN match at Really Rad Weekend at some point? I know we talk about doing like Saturn Bomberman all the time, which I don't know why we haven't done that. That's like a no-brainer. But we're formulating all of our like tournaments and specifics and payouts and scheduling and all that. So schedules should be out next week. Still kind of getting panels from everybody and all that stuff. So that'll be cool. So yeah, that's kind of like the really rad weekend news. The big one is Bam's going to be here. The sad one is my retro life is not. Um, but yeah, it's shaping up to be a great convention. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, all right. So I know we talked a lot last week about Pinball Expo and what we were going to do in Chicago. However, once again, while it's fresh on my brain, I want to talk about our experiences there. And I'll be brief on this because I got some topics that I want to really hit on once we go down the list. So we fly into Chicago for Pinball Expo 2023. Once again, also for vacation. And flying Friday, our flight was a little bit delayed, not bad. I wrote emails the entire time I was on the plane and tried to develop some ad sets, which sadly all got destroyed thanks to the plane's Wi-Fi going out. I know, first world problems. And then Sam played. We took two devices. So I know we talked about this last time. We took the Analog Pocket, which was loaded with ROMs. The Analog Pocket's the FPGA handheld. And I took a Miu Mini Plus, I believe, which is not FPGA, but it is an emulation handheld. It kind of looks like a Game Boy Color, but wider. And it can play a whole bunch of stuff. I think all the way up to like PlayStation, even though it doesn't have analog sticks. So Sam played through a bunch of NES games, or like checked out a bunch of NES games on the Analog Pocket during our flight. So I know we were talking about what we were going to take on the plane to play, and that's what she chose. And I think for her it worked out really well because she was able to play some games that she hadn't. I know she checked out like the Adventure Island games and Little Samson and a few others, mainly platformers. So that was kind of the plane game, if you will. We landed in Chicago. We got an Uber. We got to our hotel. So the thing about Chicago is, while it's a huge city and there's a lot to do, when you think about a city like, let's say, New York, there's a whole lot, but it's all kind of condensed down in this thing where you can like hop, skip, and jump to all these places. The Chicago area is spread out, so anything you want to do, or anything that we had planned to do, was like a 20 to 30 minute ride in different directions to get to these different places. So took like a 30-minute ride to our hotel. We didn't have anything planned for Friday. Galloping Ghost was kind of on the menu, but we were really tired. So we got dinner twice, actually. We found one spot that was relatively fine. And my buddy Kingsley's in the chat, and I'm very happy. So we found this spot that served like it was like dumplings and stuff like that. So your typical Asian fare. It was pretty good. I think I gave it a rating of a 6.5 out of 10, where like everything was solid but not very flavorful, not a lot of depth. And then we were like, all right, we want like a drink and dessert. So we went to this one spot. Turns out it's amazing, and they have an amazing dinner menu, so we got dinner again. It was Italian. It was very, very good. I think it was called Gilt Bar, Gilt. It was fantastic. Our server was amazing. She gave us a lot of recommendations. Turns out that restaurant group owns a lot of things in the area that were very good. We ended up going to another one of their restaurants on the last day we were there. We went there for brunch, and it was solid. That was called Armitage. So, took it easy night one. Woke up my Uber driver that night, who was awesome. We hired him the next morning to drive us to Pinball Expo because it was about 45 minutes away from our hotel. And Pinball Expo is more or less a trade show for pinball. You walk in and they're unveiling new games, there's parts for sale, stuff like that. But it's all pinball machines, and they are all free play with the price of your admission. So we get there, we grabbed a coffee, we went in. I mean, it was pretty large. I won't lie. Slightly smaller than what I was expecting. However, it was pretty good size, and the variety of pinball was fantastic. And they had unveiled some new games. So it was Labyrinth, Elton John, Ninja Blade by Turner Pinball. There was another game that they brought out a prototype, and I cannot remember the name of it. So, I mean, we got right to it. We explored the floor. We jumped in line to play Labyrinth because I think I'm going to buy one. I wanted to see if it was good because, like, the theme's rad, but sometimes the gameplay is lacking, even though a theme's rad, which we talked about last week. Put a couple games on a Labyrinth machine. It's fantastic. If you get the chance to play one, please do. The theme integration's awesome. The gameplay's great. It's got good shots. I think that even though I said last week that the toys and stuff look complex, like they're going to be a problem for locations, I think the machine will be solid and will hold up. So, played that, and then we jumped in line for Elton John, which the theme, I'm neither here nor there with the Elton John theme, but it's a Steve Ritchie game, and he's a well-known designer, probably the best-known pinball designer. And the game plays great, shoots great. It's probably the best Jersey Jack flipper feel I've ever played or they've ever had. And that's Sir Elton John. You're right, Sir Elton John. So they increased the flipper power on this machine, so it shoots more like a Stern. A lot of Jersey Jacks are the flippers don't have enough power, and it feels like once the ball gets to the back of the playfield, it's lost a lot of momentum. This was not that. The biggest problem with the Elton John machine is it is a light show. It is crazy, and you will think you're having a seizure playing it. There's a lot going on. The music's loud. There's 16 Elton John tracks on it, and he recorded original audio for the game. It's kind of wild. It's one of those things where, like, everything about that game is good. But if they had made it something else, it would be better. And the biggest problem I have with it, outside of it being Elton John, which isn't even a problem, it's just not for me, is that it feels, with the way that they have a giant screen in the back box, it feels like the new style Vegas slot machines. So it's real flashy. It would not fit the bar at all. As far as like mood and theme goes. Game's great though. I mean, it's a great game. If you get a chance to play it by all means. It's just not for us. However, we will be purchasing a Labyrinth as soon as we're able to, because that game is great. It's got the animatronic topper with the goblins. It's rad. Then we kind of just went through and we played a bunch of just random stuff that we normally wouldn't play. We ended up spending a total of 12 hours there. Connected with a lot of people. There were a couple of video game vendors. Funny enough, one of the guys there, I believe his badge said his name was David Page. He was selling some retro games, as well as some stuff for David Aguiar, which is really funny. So it was good running into like a proxy connection, I guess. Sam got Scott Pilgrim, the Switch limited run re-release in the SNES style box from him, and I got a box copy of World Bowling on Game Boy. Can't go anywhere without buying retro games. It's a curse. And then, let's see, what else did we pick up? I talked to the guy that did Token Taverns, which is a documentary about arcade bars, and funny enough, it was filmed all in Florida, mainly the Tampa area and like Tarpon Springs. A lot of it had to do with our friends over at Lowry Parkade, which is really cool. So I picked up the Blu-ray and a T-shirt, and then I ran into a booth that looked like familiar, but it was like art, but you used 3D glasses to look at it. And then I saw this poster, and it's like the scene from Hackers where they're all huddled over the computer when Dade Murphy's like about to reveal that he was Zero Cool. And so I realized I have the poster, and I talked to the guy. Super cool. He does great art. His name escapes me right now, but I'll put it in like the YouTube description. He's got a new Razor and Blade poster out that I need to order, which will be sick. I wish, as far as Pin Expo goes, we would have been able to take some parts home because people were blowing stuff out. I missed out on a Dolly Parton back glass for $10. Everything was selling really, really cheap for the most part, except for the machines themselves. The big highlight of Pin Expo, though, is I met up with Nick, who's a buddy of mine on Blue Sky. He's a fellow Nap kid, which was cool. We got to hang out with him and meet his family, and they were going to try and come down for Really Rad Weekend. So that was cool, like, knowing someone there, and it was a good time. He and his wife suggested that we go to a place called Mitsuwa, and so we dipped out for lunch, and we took an Uber a couple minutes down the road. And Mitsuwa is this giant, so imagine like a Whole Foods grocery store or an Aldi or something like that, bigger than an Aldi technically. And it's an all Japanese grocery store, and then they have a food court attached and a Japanese bookstore. So we went over there and we grabbed some curry. It was actually really cold in Chicago. Every time I've been in Chicago, it's been cold. And grabbed some food, walked around the grocery store. We bought some snacks and some Japanese energy drinks, which was fun. Then we went back and played more pinball. And we got to. One of the things about Pin Expo that I was really looking forward to, and it's the same reason why we wanted to go to Galloping Ghost, was more for like shopping, not necessarily there at the location, but finding things that we may want to purchase in the future. And it's it was a good experience because we got to play a lot of both classic and new games to check those out to see what we want. One that surprised me that I thought I would hate because I really don't like the fan base, but I like the game is Venom. Venom by Stern. We put some games on that, and like that thing plays great. It's got some cool toys and mechs in it, and it saves your progress and has like a cool like mission mode more or less while you're playing the game. Alta Grind asks, how's Killer Queen? Killer Queen's great. Yeah, we love Killer Queen. So this is while I record the podcast. So if I don't interact with the Twitch chat too much, I'm sorry. But yeah, for those that don't know, we have a Killer Queen machine at Rad Bar. We bought it a couple of years ago, and we love that damn game. It's fun. It's 5-on-5. It's kind of like Capture the Flag and Joust. But while we were at Pin Expo, we were looking for some new games, and Venom is definitely on the list now. I didn't think it would be. I think Labyrinth is priority, and then Venom's in there. But I finally got a chance to get my hands on Pulp Fiction, which is a Chicago Gaming Company game. It's more of a basic looking layout. However, it's a lot more in depth than you would think. And it's got a lot of callouts from the movie. The theme integration's great. It looks like an older machine with like the digital displays, where it's not like a full LCD and stuff like that. And the game shoots awesome. And I really want to get a Pulp Fiction. I just don't know how people will respond to it in the bar. It kind of fits. I know my buddy Chatham has one on order, so you'll be able to play it at local market in Destin at some point. I'm probably going to have to pick one up. So Labyrinth and Pulp Fiction are really high on the list, and then Venom from Pin Expo. So that was cool. They had a homebrew section where people build their own games. Lots of really neat stuff in there. There was a Beavis and Butthead pinball. There's an Animal House pinball. They had Mass Effect, and then there was something else, another game. They had a Ghost in the Shell one, which was cool. Oh, there was a League of Legends theme one that looked neat, but I didn't get a chance to play it. So that was Saturday. We spent all of Saturday playing pinball. And then we went back to the hotel room. We ordered some Italian beefs and some hot dogs and whatnot, some like standard Chicago fare, and crashed out. And we actually woke up late on Sunday, and we kind of explored, and we were tossing around the idea. We're like, do we really want to go to Galloping Ghost? Do we really want to like utilize our time to do that instead of like exploring and doing other stuff? Because it'll kind of feel like work. I mean, when you own an arcade, you don't always want to go to another arcade to play games. And so we went and ate at a couple places. We walked around. We explored Wicker Park, which was a really cool area. We found an awesome coffee shop. The person that was working there, she gave us some great suggestions of things to do. And so we checked out some game stores. There was a game store in Wicker Park called The Exchange. And it looked relatively corporate from the outside, and everything was in these like white and glass display cases. Nothing out in the open except for some stuff that was on top of the cases that you couldn't really reach. And I was like, the prices here are going to be insane and awful. So we're like walking around, and their prices were really high on what we call like bread and butter items. So like your Marios and Zeldas. They were astronomical is not the word, but they were like higher than what I would pay, even if I was like not educated in the scene or involved in the scene the way that I am. So I started looking through their case, and I spotted a copy of Space Adventure on Sega CD, and I was like, all right, I need to know, because it didn't have a price sticker. Guy walks over coincidentally at the same time asking if I need help. I asked him what the price was, and it was sitting next to a copy of Snatcher. And so Space Adventure was $500, but it was a mint copy. And I'll tell you what, like that feels like a pretty good deal on a mint Space Adventure. I think we sold one for, this is a couple years ago now, for like $650 or $700. And it's cool. It's I almost snagged it. I was close. So I was looking around. Snatcher was 1,200, which is about right. And so then I was looking at some of their other games, and everything that was kind of like off the wall or a little lesser known, they were definitely very reasonably priced on a lot of things. So if you're in the area, go check out the Exchange in Wicker Park, which is cool. That was the only like full-on retro game store we hit. So we sat down, ate a burger at Small Cheval, which was awesome. That place is great if you're ever in the Chicago area. And then we said, screw it, let's go to Galloping Ghost. If not for anything else, for the museum aspect. And I actually took video footage while we were there. So it was about a 30-minute ride. We get there, and when you walk in, from the outside, it doesn't look like much. But my God, they have over 900 machines for sure. And I know at one point it was like 950, and they added them every Monday. I didn't get an exact count. The guy behind the counter was super cool. So it's $25, all you can play. And they've essentially taken over an entire city block and loaded them all with arcade machines. And they keep tearing down walls and adding more and adding more. And then about 2 blocks down the road, they have a pinball thing. And for an extra $5, you can get into both and play all you want. So we went in, and we didn't really have a game plan. So we were like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk around every single room in Galloping Ghost, the arcade section. Then we'll walk to the pinball part, play some pinball since we're already kind of pinballed out from the expo. And then we'll come back and we'll actually play some games. And so it took us a good like half hour to an hour to walk around the entire thing. And it's wild. They have actual arcade machines for so much. A lot of it's in Dynamo like HS9 cabs, so the standard like front inward cut arcade cabs that are just a standard JAMA cabinet. Um, Almost every single one um, was a CRT, with a few exceptions. Um, Out of every game they had there, I want to say maybe 15 were down, which is nuts. And it was the wildest thing I've ever seen. They had everything from games from the 70s all the way to like modern games, to like Japanese exclusives. And so we checked it out. We walked over to the pinball place. The pinball machine was place was a little bit smaller. They maybe had like 15 pins at the most. A good chunk of them were down, but they had some really fun games. They had this Williams like vertical thing that almost looked like a Joust or a Robotron cabinet, but it was like reflecting. It was a mirror, and it reflected a vertical, or made it look like the pinball machine was vertical, and it was super cool. And you have to use the joysticks for the flippers, and then you use buttons to change the lanes. So that was really cool. So we walked back over and we're like, all right, it's time to play some games. Played a little bit of Time Traveler, which is one of my favorites from childhood. Um, I grew up too poor to really afford to be able to actually play it, so got a little nostalgic there, and it was tough, but it was good being able to like check it out again. Um, but we went through their shmup section, we went through their Atari games, through everything, and I'll upload a video. Basically, what I'm going to do is cut together these video clips and turn it into a short where it's like a Galloping Ghost 2023 arcade tour in under a minute, because it just keeps going and going and going. The interesting thing was, one, no rhythm games, which they don't have any space, so I get it. It's real tight in there. Like in some sections, it might be like 2.5 feet apart between the machines, so you kind of have to like turn sideways to walk through some. But it's wild. And no rhythm games, no candy cabs, probably for the sake of people sitting down. None of that. Um, there was something else that I was going to touch on where I was like, this is interesting that they don't have this. All of their racing games are, for the most part, unless it's an integrated cab, or single player to save space and get some more variety in there. Um, but it's, if you're ever in Chicago, even if you don't want to play games, it's worth the admission just to walk around and check out all the things that they had. Some highlights for me were obviously Time Traveler. They had Return of the Jedi there, which is one of the first arcade games I ever remember playing, along with Alien Syndrome. Um, they had some Japanese exclusive stuff like Castlevania, and I think they had a Silent Hill game, and then a Resident Evil game. But so many shmups. A lot of the shmups I had actually played because I've emulated a lot of them. Whatever. The place that I really spent the most time was in more of the like the classic games from like the early '80s to mid '80s. I know it's not like super classic, but it's somewhere where I feel like we could benefit from a couple cabinets at our establishment. And so we checked those out, and then I stumbled upon a game I actually bought before we left. Games from the Dead is in the chat, and he was with me when I got it. It was that Juno First game, and it's a Laserdisc game by Sega, and they actually stole assets. I thought the guy I got the game from was mistaken, but once I played it, there's like movie assets from Star Trek and like Babylon 5, or sorry, not Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica. And it's a Laserdisc game where you fly a ship, and it's kind of like Star Fox, and it's on rails. I actually ended up setting the high score on the machine, which was neat, at least for the day. And I was pretty close to the third place world record, which was funny, because I'm sure nobody even likes to play the game. But that was cool. Just tons of neat stuff. And check out the video when I upload it. Maybe I'll just cut it together and just be like, all right, here's a 3-minute tour. It took me, I say 3 minutes, but I think it was closer to like 10 minutes to really like at a fast pace walk through every section of that place. it was wild. So we stayed there the rest of the night, and then we Ubered back, crashed, flew home, and got right back to work. So that's where we're at now. Uh, Viber Zero Hour in the chat asked if I played Solar Assault. So I did not play Solar Assault. However, Sam did, and I watched her play it. And that cabinet's cool. I like. It's got like this depth to it, to where when you're looking in, it's got like some stuff around the screen or in between the glass and the screen itself. And super neat game. Odd but super neat. And then, oh, I'm sorry. I was calling the Laserdisc game Juno's First. That's not the Laserdisc game. Juno First is more of like a vector style game. The Laserdisc game is called not Aragon, something Belt. But it's that one was cool too. So Galloping Ghost, if you're in the area, check it out. The fact that it's like mainly Dynamo cabs is a little less impressive until you get over to the classic side. But just the sheer amount of room that they take up is wild. Place is neat. Got something to aspire to. They were also set up at Penn Expo with a few games. So that was cool to see like them at the expo and then go to their actual establishment. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The best thing about Chicago, outside of, the events that we went to, the food is insane. Chicago is one of the most insane food cities I have ever been to, and I've been to some good ones. I can't say enough about their food scene. Whether you want high end or just like low end good food, or lower price good food. I say low end. I don't mean that quality wise, but it was awesome, and I'm glad we went. We'll definitely be back to Chicago, maybe even for Penn Expo once again. So thanks, Chicago, for the hospitality. But one thing that Penn Expo made me do is when I got home and we're prepping the bar for Really Rad Weekend, I'm like, all right, I need to order some backup parts and do an inventory on my parts that we do have. Just see what I need to order. And I don't know what happened. So normally I order from Marco's Specialties. It's a website, great customer service. Their shipping is fantastic. That's why I utilize them. They're a little more expensive than the other sites, but their ship time's great. And they package well and always get the order right. But they were out of stock on a lot of stuff. And I don't know if that's because of the expo or what. I know they had a presence there. So then I went over to Pinball Life to try and get some stuff. And they were out of a lot of stuff too. And then I checked some other sites and prices are up on a bunch of things. I needed like some wire forms, which I'm probably going to end up just making for my Star Wars. I need like a one-way, it's called a one-way ball gate. So when the ball exits, it can't go back in. We had one break. We had a bunch of stuff break while I was gone. It was fantastic. So yeah, I ordered a bunch of parts today. I ordered some more cleaning supplies. And it's time to get to work on these games to make sure they're in tip-top for Really Rad Weekend, because pinball is always the one that breaks. So ordered a new gun housing for House of the Dead, which we talked about on the last show. So that's good. Hopefully all this stuff gets here in time. We can knock that out and then go from there. But yeah, it's just crazy that the pinball sites are out of stock on a lot of stuff, and then also the prices are up. So moving on in our notes, I wrote this one down, and I'm not going to dive too far into it because it's been covered by so many people. And I don't think we talked about it last week because I think it was announced right after the show. Analog, they make a bunch of FPGA devices to play your original hardware. They make the Analog Pocket. They make the Mega SG and Super Famicom one and the NES one and blah, blah, blah. So the holy grail for FPGA has been N64, and they announced that they're doing an N64 FPGA console. And in true analog fashion, we don't really have a date. I think it just said 2024, which is fine. I'm sure it'll sell out, and I'm sure it'll take 2 years to ship, just like every other one. But it will be cool to have another boutique item to add to the shelf of boutique consoles to play games that no one wants to play. I'm kidding. I love the N64. I mean, there's great games on it. There's Goemon. There's like Starshot. There's Bomberman Hero. There's Mario Kart. There's Smash. So yeah, Analog's releasing an FPGA in 64. We'll see what that does to the market. Could be very interesting. Could be really weird. We'll see if repros drive the market or if authenticity wins again. So, moving along, because I don't have much to say about that. Just another thing. In recent retro gaming drama slash news, on Facebook, there is a group that it was called the Video Game Display and Kiosk Collectors Group, something of that nature. I've been in it for a really long time. I think since about the time it was started, to be honest, where people like to show off their standees and their kiosks and their displays and ask information and things like that. And in the past day, I believe yesterday, maybe the day before, the word on the street is Nintendo filed a complaint with Facebook and had the group nuked. So the group is gone. Which is funny and sad on a couple different levels. Sad because the group has been around for a very long time, and there were some good posts and information in there for certain things and for historical reasons. Kind of like the way Nintendo Age was, where it was great to be able to like search a term and you might be able to find some stuff. So like if you search Star Fox standee, mine will pop up, or would if the group still existed. However, in the past, I don't know, let's say 6 to 8 months, that group's gotten real bad in certain ways where there was a lot of encouragement, joking or not, over these stupid displays at Targets. They call them the Mario stripper pole. If you have a Target in your area and you go in, you'll see Mario on like a pole, kind of like he's sliding down it. It looks like he's dancing. Where people are like, how do I get this? And I want to acquire one because they know that they're just there for display purposes. And there was a lot of encouragement, joking or not, to just take them or bribe people or do whatever. And the reality of it is that those things are still property of Nintendo. They're just displays inside of a Target store. So Nintendo doesn't like that. And when you piss off Nintendo, they take away your toys. And so the group is gone. I know a lot of people have recently gotten into kiosk collecting and display collecting and things like that. So there was a lot of uproar on Facebook. And I know, like, I think I saw in a thread that there were like 15 new kiosk groups and everybody's kind of vying to be the new one. It's kind of a realm I'm going to stay out of. But it's these big pieces where people are trying to move things for lots of money. Or they used to be able to when it was like certain items, like Nintendo fiber optic signs. Always sought after, always expensive. But now people are starting to really worship the cardboard, if you will, and the paper it was printed on. So it's people were going to GameStops and harassing people to get their kiosks and their displays. And then, you know, dumpster diving has always been a thing. I mean, that's how I got my Grand Theft Auto San Andreas standee that I no longer have. When I was in high school, I pulled it out of a dumpster. Which, like, it's a shame that that stuff gets destroyed. But at the same time, it's just a display. And now that they're mass produced and they're not that special, a lot of them, it's weird to see people covet them in certain ways. And it's not like they're just doing it because it's their favorite property. They're doing it for profitability. And so seeing this group go away is going to have an interesting impact of the, like, information shift of, like, how are you going to be able to tell, now that we're starting over at relatively zero, how often something gets posted, how many have been produced, things like that. So it could go either way. Things could either be exposed to be overly produced and mass produced, or we could see a shift where it's exploited that the group is no longer there with the lack of information, that people can hype some pieces up and say, like, this is the only one because you can't find it on the internet. Because guess what? All the information's gone because Nintendo was like, get out of here and quit harassing our reps. Quit stealing our stuff. Quit trying to make money off of our things. So I thought that was interesting. It'll be fun to see where this goes and if any drama comes of it. I think it would be really funny if maybe like Nintendo did not send a letter and somebody just nuked the group out of nowhere. I could see that being a possibility. Introduce a little chaos into everything. So, I don't know. Are you guys into kiosk and display collecting? If so, comment below. Do you think it's stupid? Do you think it's cool to have a bunch of junk? I got a bunch of posters behind me from the GameCube era. I need to sell those. I don't even like GameCube. Stupid box. So yeah, that's that. Just an interesting thing I saw. That kind of brought up well, we'll jump down into like happenings at RadJunk. Since we've talked about the bar and my personal life and Facebook BS. So we got some cool trades. We got back-to-back virtual boys. We got one from our friend Dylan, which was an arranged deal at trade night. Super clean, stands good, all that. And then while we're like, I think we were getting on the plane, Molly's like, hey, look what I got. And somebody had brought in a virtual boy in the rental case from Blockbuster, which is really cool. I haven't seen one of those in a couple of years. The case is in really nice shape, minus the foam. Foam's starting to get hard and brittle. So, for those that are younger or don't know, you used to be able to rent consoles at Blockbuster or your local video store, and that way you could play the games. And Blockbuster rented out Virtual Boys, and a lot of the consoles, like I have a couple PlayStation rental cases, one for my friend Kingsley who's in the chat, and I had a Sega Saturn one. I don't know if I still have that one, but they're in these like hard cases that kind of look like a Pelican case, and they have molded foam around them that everything kind of fits in nicely. And so the foam is really notorious for like getting hard and crumbly and deteriorating. They make kits so you can redo it. They're a little expensive, or you can get like I think it's called pick and pull or plucking. I can't remember. It's mainly used in like camera cases and things like that. So I might redo the foam in it, but the Virtual Boy's nice, and it came with Tellero Boxer and Red Alarm as well as Mario Tennis. Somebody just walked in, older couple, and they're like, "Hey, I've got this virtual thing, this boy game glasses stuff," and they walked in with that. So Molly snagged that. Super cool. It'll probably be for sale at some point. Unless I decide to be stingy and keep it, but I don't think I will. Running out of space. So that was a cool thing that got traded in. Excuse me. So let's get into the market report. This isn't going to be a super in-depth market report. It'll be a quick one. So I'm still trying to get used to the granularity of the reporting now that we're trying to fix it. There's a couple more things I want to do to make it more streamlined. But our top sellers this week, which are relatively different from the previous week, are N64, Game Boy, and PS4. Now, N64 was super hot a couple of years ago. It's still popular. And I think it always will be. Especially for people that are my age or a little bit younger. I feel like N64 kind of spans a generation, a certain generation of relevance where it goes a little deeper than some of these like single 5-year age groups of video game consoles. So it always does well. However, I think what was happening this week and what pushed it over the sales edge is that We have a very decent selection of N64 games. We also have enough consoles, um, and people were buying consoles and then a game or two to go with it. So that drove the numbers up and pushed it into first place because it was kind of rapid fire. Like, I need a console in Pokemon Snap. I need a console in Smash. I need a console in Zelda. And so that did really well this past 7 days since we last spoke. Game Boy, I mean, it's freaking Game Boy. It it's the juggernaut on the sales report. It doesn't matter if it's $5 games or $500 games. It will always have a place in there because it is the most consistent, most rock solid platform there is. Whether it be people buying them to have that nostalgia drip of Pokemon or buying Game Boys to mod and like do whatever with. So that helps a lot too, and it's also a good console because it's cheaper that a lot of people still give their kids today, where they're like, "You're going to start out with what I started out with," or "This is cheap enough to where if you lose it or break it, it is not the most devastating thing in the world, and I can buy you a bunch of cheap games for it." And those games are typically pretty decent because they're not meant to be big, expansive things, especially like OG Game Boy or Game Boy Color. Obviously, there's some games with some depth, like any of the RPGs or even the Pokemon games. You can make those as deep as you want them to be if you try to complete the Pokédex and get all the badges and blah, blah, blah. So that's why we'll consistently see Game Boy in those top sales slots. Usually it's in our top three, and I would be surprised if it ever left the top five. PS4 is an interesting one. I didn't break down each individual sale so I could see what was selling with PS4, but we do have a pretty consistent base of people that play PS4 games still, because not everybody can get a PS5. It's an expensive console. Not everybody wants to make the jump. PS4 has a pretty decent sized library with a lot of like blockbuster games in it. So if you want some long narratives and whatever, or if you are buying just like the Game Boy, a console for a younger person and you want them to get into like Ratchet and Clank or Little Big Planet or things like that, it's a great base to build upon. And you can get a PS4. Don't quote me on this because I don't know what our cheapest one is, but I swear I think they're down to like $150, maybe less. So you can go in, get a PS4. The games stay cheap because so many were produced. And so, like, if you want to play something like The Last of Us, I think it's like $20. And there's lots of good games in between that are even lower. I had a guy come in yesterday that traded me a bunch of cheap games for cheap games, and no game that he got was more than like $6. But that guy's going to go home and have a great time. And so PS4 held pretty strong in there. I'm surprised to see it, though, at this juncture in the top three. It's just a weird week. So normally when we're this close to Christmas, you would start to see N64 and Game Boy, which this is historically correct. You might see Switch. You might see NES or SNES. But it's pushing pretty good. Ryan in the chat says, I feel like the last gen always holds strong, though. And I agree with that. I think it's going to be very strong, at least for the next 6 to 8 months. And then we might start to see some people after Christmas start to shift hard to PS5. And I think that also with PS4 sales, PS5 backwards compatibility helps a lot with that. And it's the same thing with Xbox. That's why 360 sales and Xbox One sales are always good. But I think that it's odd seeing it at this point because I don't know. Some people have already started Christmas shopping, and normally that's where we see the purchasing go. But it looks like PS4 is primarily being purchased to be played by the consumer that is purchasing it, not as a gift. And with games as cheap as, we'll just say $10 to $20, typically it wouldn't be this high in the sales category, especially when N64 is priced so aggressively. At the lower end we price our games at the lower end of retail in most scenarios. So when you see that overlap, it's interesting. It's not bad. It's not good. It's fun. So it'll be as we go into Christmas, though, you will see more of the nostalgia hooks, people buying gifts, and then also we'll see a lot of like new gen stuff where somebody's like, "Hey, I just bought a PS5. What's your PS5 selection look like?" Because GameStop didn't have the game that I wanted, and I think Switch is going to hold super strong, even though that a new Switch is right around the corner. I think you're going to see a lot of like aunts, uncles, grandparents, brothers, sisters buying stuff for their siblings and relatives. So that'll be pretty good. So that's our market report. I don't really have any speculative stuff. I was having a conversation the other day and I think we've talked about it on here. I think it'll be interesting outside of personal business like RadJunk sales. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with certain subsets of collections. I'm really curious to see what starts to pop on the Game Boy Color. And then if we see any lesser known titles start to explode on the Game Boy Advance, because I know we sell a lot of Game Boy Advances and we always have, but typically it's more of an accessory to a Pokemon game. But I want to see if anybody starts to deep dive those collections and not really uncover quote unquote hidden gems in the MJR style, but just like, I feel like that's more of an uncharted territory. So we'll see. Sega people still suck. I said it last week. Just kidding. I love you all. Love you, Sega Steve. Let's jump into the Q&A. Been rambling for a little bit. These episodes are getting a little bit longer because I have a lot to say and I tired ramble, so I'm sorry if my voice is annoying. All right, so our first question comes from Wyatt of Wyatt's Wicked Goods. He's more or less the Pillsbury Doughboy or Keebler elf of my life. He makes great cookies. Buy his cookies. Wyatt asks, what's the weirdest thing someone has tried to trade in at the store, and what is the most rad? So I have a singular answer for both of those things, and it is a welder. Someone came in while Sam was working, and they put a welder on the counter and asked if she wanted to buy it, and she said no. And weirdest because we're a video game store. Like, if you look around, you're surrounded by games, and you brought a welder in, Brad, because like maybe I need a welder. We've had other stuff too where people have come in barefoot and tried to sell their shoes. There was a guy that stole a TV out of the hotel across the street and tried to trade that in. Just all kinds of stuff. As far as rad things go, I had a guy come in. His brother-in-law actually owns Rose Colored Gaming. His name's Angus. It was his first time in the store. He thought it was trade night, but he was like a week off. And I had just gotten some really cool like translucent shells that they used to sell in Leek Sang. I think I talked about those last week. And he was looking at it. He's like, man, I really like those. I got a thing in the car for trade. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a PVM. And it was my Ikigami, like my bigger one that I ended up getting. So that was rad. I had a guy pull up one time, and in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best purchase, but it was a cool purchase. He's like, hey, I got a bunch of old computer games in the trunk of my car. He was with his mom or something like that. Older lady. Nice dude. Super nice. I go out and look, and it's all Amiga games, like complete in box. And this was like 6 or 7 years ago. And I ended up buying them for a couple $100. And they're a real like slow move, and not everybody's into Amiga. But to me, that was one of the raddest things that I got. Another rad one is I traded a complete Commodore 64 setup. So monitor, bread bin, disk drives, a drive emulator, stuff like that, for an Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch dev kits. That was neat. Trying to think of another bad one. I got nothing right now. My brain is like turning to mush. I mean, one of the raddest trades that we've ever done was at Retropalooza. I think it was Retropalooza 2 or 3. I had my Wii U dev kit there, and I traded it to Kingsley for his entire booth, which included like an NES TV, Bomberman Second Attack, bunch of games. That was pretty cool, I thought. Yeah, I mean, we've had all kinds of stuff. So I'll try to think of some more, and maybe we'll tell some like older stories from the shop too on this if we run out of current events to talk about. So the next question comes from our friend Nate. He says, "What's your whale that got away story? We've spoken about a few, but I want to know what your current I should have sold / I should have grabbed type story you think is one of your most memorable, or I shouldn't have sold." I wish I hadn't sold my Caltron 6-in-1. That's one I regret. I really liked that cart. I actually got that like 8 years ago today, or 8 years ago this past weekend at Emerald Coast Con 1. Yeah, we've been doing cons for a long time. So that was one that I wish I hadn't sold. I sold it to a friend of the shop, Robert, but I kind of miss it. I miss it more than I miss the Action 52. I wish I hadn't sold my Zombie Nation, but I bought one back. I got that recently at Retropalooza. There was another one that I was just thinking of. Oh, I sold Rich my boxed Panic restaurant so I could try to fund a different purchase, and that one hurts. Like, I had chased that game for so long, and I only had it for a minute. That's the one where I'm like, dang, I really shouldn't have sold that. So I'm on the hunt for another copy of Panic Restaurant at some point. But those are like the regrets of selling. As far as like, should have bought that Space Adventure in Chicago. That's a pretty good one. I've been trying to work a deal on a Magical Chase. I can't afford it right now. They're expensive. I don't know. There's not a lot where I'm like, I should have bought that these days anyway. Because normally I just grab the stuff that I want, if it's within reason. Like, I'm not a rich man, but like, typically the things I want aren't that crazy. So, I feel like there was something relatively recently where I'm like, damn, why didn't I buy that when I had the chance? It's probably mainly arcade stuff at this point. Yeah, that's a good question. What about you guys? What's your white whale? What's some stuff that you wish you would have grabbed or regret selling or regret not buying? Put it in the comments, either on the YouTube thing or wherever this is posted, which is everywhere. So we got one more question. It comes from our friend Mike. Bam Margera, how did this happen? Will he sign my CKY2K DVD? I kind of talked about it. His agent got a hold of me, and we just made it happen. He wanted to come to the beach, so wanted to get away, and we could provide that. And, you know, being a charity event, he wanted to help out, so we were glad to have him. So hopefully it all works out. I know he's got some stuff going on, but he seems to be doing well. And we're going to take care of him while he's here. So it's really cool. And it's something I never thought would be happening in my life. Will he sign your thing? Yes, he will be doing signatures. He does charge for them like most people do these days. But he will be doing signings and selling some stuff. So bring your DVD. Get a signature. It's gonna be a week. We got like 3 weeks, right? 3 weeks. Yeah, that's what it. Whoo, buddy, almost only 2 weeks. This con's coming up fast. Tickets are available. Buy your tickets. I'm probably going to turn off early bird pricing pretty soon. Prices will go up at the door. We've only got a few VIP passes left. We sold a lot, surprisingly. Normally people go for the normal weekend pass, but everybody wanted that damn t-shirt, which they're going to be pretty cool. We've been getting the merch in. We got some cool stuff for the swag bags if you are a VIP. Jesus is confirmed. They will be at the bar all weekend during Really Rad Weekend. Friday and Saturday. We just went over the floor plans and finalized all that. I finally got confirmation on some things. So that's all good. No trade night this month because of Really Rad Weekend. We'll be doing a trade event at the show. Probably Friday, I believe, at about 6. And then prepping the bar, prepping the shop for everything. We're going to move everything, a good chunk of stuff from the shop to the show onto the vendor floor. We'll have a table along with everybody else. Got some really cool vendors coming out. Scott Squatch will be there along with Bonfire Games and David Tavares. We've got Mike will be there. Retro Bash. He's got some awesome stuff all the time. He's always wheeling and dealing. Sega Steve will be there. And a whole lot more. Our vendor hall isn't very big just due to constraints on the property. However, we do curate it in a way to try and provide good variety of everything. Next year, we will have a bigger vendor room or 2 vendor rooms. Now that we've got some stuff. Yeah, Retro Replay will be there. Viper Zero Hour. Our buddy Ryan, he's got some good stuff. He's stingy on his prices, but beat him up. He deserves it. He deserves the pain. But yeah, next year will be a little bit bigger as far as vendor space goes. We should be able to at least double the amount of vendors that we have. And this thing keeps growing. If we keep growing, we'll keep putting on good shows. So, and once again, every single penny, I can't stress this enough. We don't make any money off this. Every single dime from this show goes to help local charities. And this year it's Fresh Start for Children and Families. They help homeless families get back on their feet with job placement and housing. So it's a good cause. What else? It's almost Halloween. I'm very excited. There will be good pictures of our costumes on the internet. My son and I have matching costumes, and I'm super stoked about that. So, I kind of want to play Mario Wonder. I might try to squeeze some time in on that soon. There was another game I got not too long ago, and it escapes me right now. But maybe I'll sneak in some game time if I can. Yeah, tax write-off. It's a lot less than you would think. It's not that great, but we do it for a good cause and we have a good time, and I get to see all my friends, which is a big deal to me anyway. So, trying to think if anything else is coming up. Halloween at the bar. We will be at Trunk or Treat. I think that's what it's called. At the Boardwalk on Tuesday. I'm going to drive the tiny van out and give out candy with the girls. I feel like there's something I'm missing. My show notes are not good enough. I'm not good at this. Sam just put up a new reel on Instagram. I'll have it up on YouTube tonight. We started a little series a while back that we're continuing called Spot the Fake, which is a good time. It's fun to see who thinks they know how to spot a repro. So take a look at that. So I'm going to wrap it up. This podcast is live on Twitch every Thursday night, typically around 10 p.m. Central Time. We record live, and then after the fact, it is uploaded to youtube.com/RadJunk, Spotify podcasts, and Apple Podcasts as well. Or you can check out the VOD on Twitch if that's your thing. Follow us on all social media. We're RadJunk everywhere. I'm Joe Alonzo. And everybody, have a good week. Be safe this weekend. It's Halloween celebratory weekend, or however you want to say it. It's the weekend before Halloween, but it's the weekend that all the bars celebrate. So be careful. It's a wild one. Everybody be safe and stay rad.